There are moments in life when heaven seems silent. The prayers have been spoken, the tears have been shed, the waiting has stretched longer than you ever imagined. You have walked through seasons where every door appeared closed, every answer delayed, and every promise hidden behind a veil of mystery. Yet it is often in such moments that God whispers the words we are least prepared to hear. Sit down now, not because he has abandoned the work, not because the story is over, but because there are certain miracles that cannot be hurried by human hands. We live in an age that worships movement. We are told that success belongs to those who run faster, strive harder, and never stop pushing. Yet the kingdom of God often moves according to an entirely different rhythm. The farmer plants the seed, but he cannot command it to grow. The sailor raises the sail, but he cannot create the wind. The believer obeys God, but cannot manufacture divine timing. And perhaps that is where many hearts struggle today. You have done all that you knew to do. You prayed. You remained faithful. You endured disappointment. You resisted the temptation to quit. And now you find yourself standing in a place where effort alone can take you no further. This is the place where faith begins to breathe. For God has never been limited by what appears possible to human eyes. Throughout history, the greatest movements of God arrived when circumstances suggested the exact opposite. When the sea stood before Israel, God made a pathway. When the giant mocked David, God prepared a victory. When darkness covered the horizon, God was already writing a brighter chapter. The difficulty is that we often judge God's activity by visible evidence. We assume that because we cannot see movement, nothing is happening. Yet much of God's finest work occurs beneath the surface. Roots grow before branches appear. Foundations are laid before walls rise. Character is formed before destiny is revealed. What if the delay you've been fighting is actually preparation? What if the waiting season is not punishment, but positioning? What if God has been arranging circumstances, removing obstacles, and opening pathways long before you recognized any sign of change? Many people abandon hope because they misunderstand divine silence. They mistake stillness for absence. But silence does not mean God is inactive. The composer is silent while writing the masterpiece. The architect is silent while designing the structure. The craftsman is silent while shaping the work that will one day astonish everyone who sees it. And God often works in the same way. You may feel forgotten. You may feel overlooked. You may wonder whether the promises spoken over your life were ever real. Yet the truth remains unchanged. God does not forget. He does not lose track of his plans. He does not begin what he cannot finish. The pages of your story may appear confusing today, but heaven sees the entire book. God sees the ending while you are still struggling to understand the current chapter. That is why he sometimes says, sit down, rest, trust, wait, not because nothing is coming, but because something so significant is already moving into place. That anxiety cannot improve it, fear cannot stop it, and human effort cannot accelerate it. There are blessings that arrive only after seasons of preparation. There are opportunities that require maturity before they can be entrusted to us. There are victories that would crush us if they appeared too early. God knows precisely what your future demands. He knows the strength you must develop. He knows the lessons you must learn. He knows the faith that must deepen within you. And when the appointed moment arrives, what seemed impossible will suddenly become reality. The door that refused to open will move. The answer that seemed delayed will appear. The breakthrough that felt distant will stand before you, not because chance decided to favor you, not because fortune changed direction, but because God's timing finally intersected with God's promise. So, if your heart is weary today, hear this clearly. Do not mistake the waiting room for the final destination. Do not confuse preparation with rejection. Do not assume that delay means denial. The God who guided you yesterday is guiding you today. The God who sustained you in the valley will sustain you on the mountain. And the God who made the promise remains faithful to fulfill it. Sit down now, not in defeat, not in surrender to fear, but in confidence. For what God is preparing may be far greater than anything you have imagined. And when it arrives, you will understand why the waiting was necessary. You will see that every delay had purpose, every challenge carried meaning, every unanswered question was leading you toward a greater revelation of God's wisdom and goodness. The story is not ending. In many ways, it is only beginning. One of the most difficult lessons a person can learn is that God often does his greatest work during seasons of waiting. We naturally assume that progress must always be visible. We believe that if nothing appears to be changing, then nothing is happening at all. Yet, throughout life, some of the most important developments occur where human eyes cannot see them. A seed buried beneath the soil appears lifeless to anyone looking from above. But beneath the surface, a quiet miracle is taking place. Roots are forming, strength is developing, and life is preparing to emerge at the proper time. In much the same way, God often works beneath the surface of our circumstances while we wait. Waiting can be frustrating because it challenges our desire for control. We want answers now. We want solutions immediately. We want to know exactly where we are going and how everything will unfold. But faith grows strongest when certainty is unavailable. If every prayer were answered instantly and every promise fulfilled the moment it was spoken, there would be little need for trust. Yet God frequently invites his people into seasons where they must rely not on what they can see, but on who he is. The waiting season becomes a classroom where patience, perseverance, and deeper faith are developed. Many people interpret delays as signs that they have been forgotten. They wonder whether their prayers have reached heaven or whether God has moved on to other matters. But divine delay is not divine neglect. The fact that something has not happened yet does not mean it will never happen. Often, God is arranging circumstances in ways we cannot comprehend. He may be preparing opportunities, shaping character, removing obstacles, or aligning events that will eventually work together for good. What appears to us as inactivity may actually be careful preparation. Consider how often God works through process rather than instant transformation. A tree does not reach maturity overnight. A building requires a foundation before the walls can rise. A masterpiece takes time before it is revealed to the world. Likewise, God frequently develops his plans through stages. Each stage has purpose, even when its purpose is not immediately obvious. The waiting itself becomes part of the blessing, because it prepares us to receive what is coming with wisdom and gratitude. There is also a hidden protection in God's timing. Sometimes we desire blessings before we are ready to handle them. We ask for doors to open without realizing that we first need the strength, maturity, or understanding to walk through them successfully. God sees what lies ahead, while we can only see the present moment. Because of this, He sometimes delays what we desire in order to prepare us for what we truly need. What feels like a setback may actually be an act of divine wisdom. Therefore, if you find yourself in a season of waiting, do not lose heart. The absence of visible progress does not mean God has stopped working. The silence you experience may simply be evidence that He is accomplishing something beyond your current understanding. Continue to trust, continue to pray, and continue to believe. The same God who planted the promise is able to bring it to fulfillment. In His perfect timing, what has been developing in secret will emerge into the light, and you will discover that the waiting was never wasted. There is a profound difference between human timing and divine timing. Human beings are naturally drawn toward immediacy. We want results as quickly as possible, answers without delay, and solutions the moment problems appear. We measure progress by what we can see, count, and control. Yet God often operates according to a timetable that transcends our understanding. What appears slow from our perspective may be perfectly timed from His. What feels delayed to us may actually be unfolding at exactly the right moment. Trusting divine timing is one of the greatest acts of faith. It requires us to believe that God sees what we cannot see. We are limited to the present moment, but God sees the beginning, the middle, and the end, all at once. He understands every detail of our lives, every challenge we will face, every opportunity that lies ahead, and every lesson that must be learned along the way. Because His vision is complete, His timing is never accidental. He does not act too early, and He does not act too late. He acts with perfect wisdom. Many people struggle with this truth because waiting often feels uncomfortable. When prayers remain unanswered and circumstances remain unchanged, doubt can begin to grow. Questions arise in the heart. Why has nothing happened yet? Why does it seem like others are moving forward while I remain in the same place? Why would God allow such a long season of uncertainty? These questions are understandable, but they often arise because we assume that visible movement is the only evidence of progress. In reality, God may be accomplishing important work long before any outward change appears. There are moments when we ask God to open a door immediately, yet He knows that stepping through that door today would create problems tomorrow. There are blessings we desire that require preparation before they can be fully received. A person who receives responsibility without maturity may become overwhelmed. A person who receives success without wisdom may misuse it. God understands these realities. His timing often protects us from receiving something before we are ready for it. Trusting divine timing also means surrendering the illusion of control. Many of us believe that if we work harder, worry more, or constantly strive, we can force outcomes into existence. Yet some things cannot be achieved through effort alone. Certain opportunities, relationships, breakthroughs, and answers arrive only when God determines the season is right. Faith grows when we learn to do our part faithfully while leaving the results in His hands. Throughout life, there are countless examples of doors opening unexpectedly after long periods of waiting. What seemed impossible suddenly becomes possible. What appeared closed suddenly opens. What felt distant suddenly arrives. Looking back, people often realize that if those blessings had come earlier, they would not have appreciated them, understood them, or been prepared for them. The waiting that once seemed frustrating becomes meaningful because it served a purpose. Divine timing invites us to live with confidence rather than anxiety. Instead of constantly fearing that we are falling behind, we can trust that God is guiding our steps. Instead of believing that every delay is a failure, we can recognize that some delays are part of a greater plan. The God who created time is not controlled by it. He knows exactly when to move, exactly when to open doors, and exactly when to fulfill his promises. Therefore, when the future seems uncertain, choose trust over fear. Continue walking faithfully. Even when answers are not immediate, continue believing, even when progress is not obvious. Divine timing may not always align with human expectations, but it is always guided by perfect wisdom. In the end, those who learn to trust God's timing often discover that what seemed like a delay was actually preparation for something far greater than they could have imagined. One of the greatest misunderstandings in the spiritual life is the belief that God's silence means God's absence. When prayers seem to go unanswered, when circumstances remain unchanged, and when heaven appears quiet, many people begin to assume that they have been forgotten. They wonder whether God still sees them, whether he still cares, or whether he is still involved in the details of their lives. Yet silence and absence are not the same thing. A quiet God is not an absent God. In fact, some of his most important work often takes place during the very seasons when he seems silent. Human beings naturally look for signs of activity. We feel reassured when we can see progress, hear instructions, or witness visible evidence that something is happening. But God's ways are often different from ours. He frequently works behind the scenes, accomplishing purposes that cannot yet be seen. Just because we cannot observe his activity does not mean he has stopped moving. Many of the most significant processes in life occur in hidden places. Roots grow beneath the ground before a tree rises above it. A child develops in the womb, long before entering the world. Foundations are laid before a building reaches the sky. The most important stages of growth are often invisible at first. When God is silent, it may be because he is developing something deeper than immediate answers. He may be strengthening faith, teaching patience, refining character, or preparing a future blessing. If every question received an instant response and every challenge disappeared immediately, there would be little opportunity for trust to mature. Faith grows strongest when it learns to rely on God's character rather than constant confirmation. It is easy to trust when every prayer is answered immediately. It is much harder and far more valuable to trust when certainty is unavailable. Many people abandon hope too quickly because they interpret silence as rejection. They assume that because God has not spoken in the way they expected, he has chosen not to act. Yet, throughout history, periods of divine silence have often preceded remarkable moments of breakthrough. There are seasons when God appears quiet, not because he is distant, but because he is carefully arranging circumstances that will eventually reveal his purpose. What feels like inactivity may actually be preparation. What appears to be stillness may conceal movement beyond human understanding. Silence can also invite us into a deeper relationship with God. When everything is clear and comfortable, people often focus more on blessings than on the one who gives them. But during quiet seasons, the heart learns to seek God for who he is rather than merely for what he provides. These moments can produce a stronger faith, one that is rooted in trust rather than circumstances. Instead of depending on constant signs, we learn to depend on God's unchanging nature. There is comfort in knowing that God's presence does not depend on our ability to feel it. Clouds may hide the sun, but they do not remove it from the sky. Likewise, temporary uncertainty does not remove God's presence from our lives. He remains faithful whether we sense Him clearly or not. His promises do not become less true because circumstances are difficult. His plans do not disappear because progress is slow. Therefore, if you find yourself in a season where heaven seems quiet, do not lose courage. Silence does not mean abandonment. It does not mean that God has forgotten your prayers or ignored your needs. It may simply mean that He is working in ways that are not yet visible. Continue. Watinai. Trusting, continue believing, and continue walking forward in faith. The day may come when you look back and realize that what seemed like silence was actually the sound of God, preparing something greater than you could have imagined. In that moment, you will understand that He was present all along, guiding every step, even when you could not hear His voice. One of the most important truths people often overlook is that preparation almost always comes before promotion. We naturally desire, reward, the breakthrough, the opportunity, or the fulfillment of a promise. But we rarely consider the process required to handle those blessings wisely. God is not only concerned with where He is taking us, He is equally concerned with who we become along the journey. Because of this, He often uses seasons of preparation to shape our character before He entrusts us with greater responsibilities. Many people become discouraged when progress seems slow. They compare their lives to others and wonder why certain opportunities have not yet arrived. They see someone else's success and assume that promotion appeared suddenly. What they often fail to recognize is the hidden season that came first. Behind every visible achievement are countless unseen moments of growth, discipline, learning, and perseverance. What appears to be an instant breakthrough is usually the result of a long process that prepared a person for that moment. God understands that blessings without preparation can become burdens. A person may pray for influence, yet lack the wisdom to use it responsibly. Another may desire success, yet not possess the character necessary to sustain it. Someone else may ask for greater opportunities while still needing important lessons that can only be learned through experience. God sees these realities far more clearly than we do. His goal is not simply to give us what we want. His goal is to prepare us to receive it in a way that leads to lasting good. The process of preparation is rarely comfortable. It often involves challenges, disappointments, delays, and unexpected detours. During these seasons, it can feel as though nothing significant is happening. Yet, God frequently uses difficulties as tools for growth. Patience is developed through waiting. Strength is developed through struggle. Wisdom is developed through experience. Humility is developed through dependence on God. These qualities cannot simply be handed to us. They must be formed over time. There are lessons that can only be learned in the valley before a person is ready for the mountaintop. The quiet seasons teach trust. The difficult seasons teach endurance. The uncertain seasons teach reliance upon God's guidance. Each challenge becomes part of the preparation process. Though we may not always understand its purpose in the moment, every experience has the potential to shape us into the person God intends us to become. Preparation also protects us from the dangers of premature promotion. Receiving something before we are ready can create problems that success alone cannot solve. Without maturity, opportunities may be wasted. Without wisdom, Blessings may be mishandled without character. Achievements may become sources of pride rather than gratitude. God often delays certain doors from opening because He is preparing us to walk through them successfully. When the time arrives, it is important to remember that God's preparation is never wasted. Every lesson learned, every obstacle overcome, and every moment of faithful endurance contributes to the work He is accomplishing within us. Even when circumstances seem ordinary, God may be developing qualities that will become essential in future seasons. The preparation itself is part of the blessing because it equips us for what lies ahead. Therefore, if you find yourself in a season where promotion seems delayed, do not assume that nothing is happening. God may be accomplishing some of His most important work within you. He may be strengthening your faith, refining your character, and preparing you for opportunities greater than you currently imagine. Trust the process. Even when it is difficult, the same God who prepares the path also prepares the traveler. When the right moment arrives, you will discover that every lesson, every challenge, and every season of growth had a purpose. What once felt like delay will be revealed as preparation, and you will be ready to step confidently into the future God has planned for you. At the heart of this message lies a powerful truth. A major breakthrough may be closer than it appears. Many people live through seasons that seem endless. They face challenges that refuse to disappear, prayers that seem unanswered, and circumstances that appear unchanged despite their efforts. During such times, it is easy to believe that nothing will ever improve. Discouragement begins to settle into the heart, and hope can feel distant. Yet, some of the greatest moments in life arrive after the longest periods of waiting. What appears impossible today may simply be standing on the edge of transformation. A breakthrough is often misunderstood. People imagine it as a sudden event that arrives without warning, but in reality, many breakthroughs are the result of unseen preparation. Long before visible change occurs, countless factors may already be moving into place. God works in ways that human eyes cannot fully observe. He can arrange circumstances, open doors, remove obstacles, and prepare opportunities long before we recognize any evidence of His activity. The breakthrough becomes visible only when the proper moment arrives. But the work itself may have been unfolding for much longer. One reason people lose hope is because they focus entirely on present circumstances. They judge the future based on what they see today. If the situation looks difficult, they assume tomorrow will be the same. If a door remains closed, they conclude it will never open. Yet history repeatedly demonstrates that dramatic change can occur in a single moment. A long season of struggle can be followed by unexpected opportunity. Years of waiting can lead to an answer that changes everything. What seems impossible from a human perspective may simply be awaiting God's appointed time. There is also a tendency to underestimate what God can accomplish. Human beings often measure possibilities according to their own limitations. They calculate outcomes based on available resources, visible evidence, and past experiences. God is not restricted by any of these things. He can create opportunities where none appear to exist. He can bring solutions from unexpected places. He can accomplish far more than human wisdom predicts. What seems like a dead end to us may simply be the place where God begins His greatest work. The promise of breakthrough does not mean life will be free from difficulties. Challenges remain part of the human experience. However, it does mean that difficulties do not have the final word. Every obstacle is temporary when viewed through the lens of God's greater purpose. Every season of hardship carries the possibility of growth, renewal, and eventual victory. The struggle you face today may be preparing you for a future you cannot yet see. Hope becomes essential during these moments. Hope is not wishful thinking or blind optimism. It is the confident belief that God remains faithful even when circumstances appear uncertain. It is the decision to trust His promises despite temporary setbacks. Hope allows people to continue moving forward when fear tells them to quit. It keeps the heart open to possibilities that have not yet appeared. Therefore, if you find yourself in a season of waiting, do not surrender to discouragement. Do not assume that today's challenges define tomorrow's reality. The God who has guided you through every previous difficulty remains at work. What seems delayed may be approaching faster than you realize. What appears impossible may already be unfolding beyond your sight. Continue walking in faith. Continue trusting God's wisdom, and continue believing that His plans are good. A breakthrough can arrive when least expected. And when it does, you may discover that every season of waiting, every moment of uncertainty, and every challenge you endured was leading to something far greater than you ever imagined.